I don't know how the Indonesia will react to another flood. There's nobody will ever understand how we feel until it happens to them. We can talk about floods and talk about the life that we all live in, but until these things actually in reality happen to you, you'll never understand how it makes you feel inside.
I spent the best part of lockdown refurbishing the bar. It was all right. We were locked down, but at least, you know, my bar looks amazing now. So to see it just wiped away in probably about 25 minutes, it was extremely painful. By the time I got down here, there was a river, you know? And like, we're not in the countryside, you know, where there are rivers. And you don't imagine that in the center of London, you know, you're gonna get rainfall that is gonna cause you 4 feet of water in your basement.
My first instinct was I've done something wrong. Like, I've left something running, and then I couldn't believe what was happening, because I'd just woken up from a nap. I was like, oh my God, what is going on? Yeah, here's my bedroom. It was just covered in a layer of mud and sewage. It's completely disgusting. You see the water line? Bathroom right here. This is honestly, I think, the most disgusting. Water was coming up through the toilet, up the bath, out of the sink. I was walking around in barefoot because I couldn't find my shoes. They were underwater already, so I could feel that it was, you know, muddy, sandy, really just gross water. When I got out the door into the garden, we had a porthole in the patio, and I fell into the porthole. And I mean, I was like, fuck's sake, this is like the last thing that I want. Like, when I fell in, it went to like here. And I was just like, my head got dunked as well. I was like, okay, well, I'm soaked now. I was like, it is what it is.
I've been head of flood forecasting for 7 years. I've looked at forecasts and found them difficult to believe because they are so far outside of what the normal range is. So it makes me scared, and it's real, and it's here, and it's happening now with the current climate. This isn't a future climate, 1.5 degrees. I am absolutely confident that we will have more extreme floods because we are living with a changing climate. Surface water flooding is the one that most people are likely to experience. It is random. So often we talk about it as the popcorn convention. So you get small cells of air rising, which then triggers these intense rainfall events.
It started raining on Monday afternoon. In fact, it really, really started raining. We just happened to be the place that this massive cloud decided to drop over a 3-hour period 8 inches of rain, which is just madness. And to be honest, we were fascinated and excited because, I mean, we'd never seen anything like this. But when the whole road started to go, we just went, crikey, now we understand the power of this. And then we realised it was going over the curb and it was lapping up towards the front door. And I'm going, actually, we need to get some sandbags or something. So we grabbed bags of coal because they were to hand and chucked them down. And it just went straight down the river. And then it started to make a sound. It's a roar and crackling, because you've got rubble in there, you've got massive chunks of tarmac going down. It is a boiling river. And then you're aware that the walls are shaking and the floor's vibrating, and it's kind of like, this is really serious. And we were really worried that the tarmac coming down that was so big would knock out the pillars and then the whole of the porch would go. So they had big mallets and pickaxes, and they were trying to break up the tarmac. But it got too dangerous for them to be out there. I just said, I think we need to go upstairs now.
She may have to get out. Well, yes, it was the house. They try and escalate his conserve what we can.
And then my son suddenly yelled, we've got water coming through the back of the house, through into the living room, where we were bailing as fast as we could. You get to the point when, OK, we've lost the downstairs floor.
When the alarm call goes, that gives us about 3 hours to prepare. I will brief the group. I will ask them all to go and look at the bridges in the town, because we have markers under each bridge. That morning, we'd already looked at the back of this bistro to see if it needed further sandbagging, and I remembered saying to myself, well, there shouldn't be any real risk now of flooding, because the river has peaked. But there was a roaring. I remember seeing a utility cupboard, and I thought, that's what I must be hearing. Little did I know what was happening under our feet. How lucky no one was killed when that building collapsed.
Flood siren is one of the worst noises ever. You really do feel as though you're under attack. And you are under attack, but you're under attack by the water and by Mother Nature. And it's tremendously scary. In the middle of a flood, you are totally helpless.
23rd of December, we've got our Christmas turkey and we chuck that into the fridge.
Suzanne knocked on the door and she said, do you think we need to get some sandbags? And even then, it didn't sink in.
I mean, the context of all of this was that we'd had an incredibly wet December, so all of the farmland was saturated, and then we got this exceptional 24 hours of a rainstorm. The water had come all the way up the garden here, and it was kind of lapping around windows, and it was starting to creep around the side of the house.
And I said, it's coming in, it's coming in. What do I do?
It begins with torrential rain. So you look at the window and it's battering down. Then the water will change colour, and me and Denise will say, that water's getting high now. We're in trouble now. So then we'll start putting sandbags at the gate. But then it beats you, it comes round the house. The first flood was in 2005. We thought it was a freak and forgot about it. 2016 was the next flood. Kind of forgot about that one as well, to tell you the truth. Then last year, we got 2 times in a year. We never got time to get over the 3rd flood, and we got the 4th one. It was like taking a hit in a boxing match. He hits you, and before you get back up, he hit you again.
I guess within about half an hour, bang, the power goes off in the house. And suddenly you're in the pitch dark, and it's silent.
And we grabbed our phones, our iPads, our passports, ridiculous things, you know, it's just like, what do you take with you? And 2 sleeping bags. And then waded our way up to the car. And it was like, what are we going to do?
We've lost our house.
It's the shock when you see a property that you live in flooded. It's everything you've ever had in your life, and it had gone. The house was built in 1971, and in all that time, it had never flooded and never really even thought about it flooding. And it was a lovely place to live, to be fair. It was secluded, quiet, so we loved it down here. But at the moment, it's still tough even just walking in the house. It's just a horrible place to be. That's the lounge. That were literally 2 hours after we thought we were getting away with it. That's this room. There's things still in here now, just looking at the Lego on the floor. There's a random Nerf gun bullet. And as soon as you're in here, I don't want to do out in here. You know, I'm a builder. I'm supposed to be big and tough. I don't want to touch anything in here because it's all memories. There's one of his cars on the floor. You know, even painting the room blue and putting the stickers on and the stars on the wall. You know, and he learnt animals, you know, by the monkey. First ever shoes that he had were there. That is what we've lost. And explaining to him where all his things went was just horrible. The company that cleaned out, they literally itemised it down to knives and forks, plates, kettles, children's toys. I think we ended up with 1,400 individual items that we basically had to sit down and put a price to. And for me personally, it were the children's toys, it were the grandkids' toys that got me. I will be honest, I came in here by myself because I didn't want anybody else in. And sorry.
For every 1 degree Celsius that we see an increase in global temperatures, we will see an increase of 7% of water vapour that the air can hold. There's more water vapour, so there's more rainfall.
And during the course of this evening, we've still got a lot of rain over Scotland and northern England and parts of Wales. But by the end of the night, many parts of Wales...
I live and breathe and eat weather, I have to be honest. Because when I was a small child, we were impacted by a severe storm which killed several people, and I just wanted to understand, how can weather be that extreme and that destructive?
When I first moved here, it was about 40 metres between me and the beach. That's the greenhouse. It's still there, hasn't moved. It's just lost all of that behind it. While I was serving in the Grenadier Guards, I was presented with this here, this miniature bearskin, and that's my cap badge on there, which I treasure. It's nice to have mementos. This was Northern Ireland, 1978, and I'd just come in off a patrol. I served for 22 years. Interesting times. Then you come out into Civilian Street, and it's quite a shock, it really is. So I retired in 2017 and decided to buy this place. And I thought it was just idyllic. After years in the armed forces with people living on top of you and the constant thrum of the traffic and the screams and the sirens going off at all hours and everything, this is me. I'm retiring and this is what I want to be. And then we had the fateful night and with the beast from the east, where everything changed for me.
Extreme weather disasters have increased 5 times in the past 50 years. And here in the UK, we're just on the fringes of the weather system.
I was stood in the kitchen making a cup of tea or something, and I heard this resounding crack. Looked down and I could see the sea between my feet. To save the rest of the building, we would have to sacrifice a 12-foot by 18-foot piece to the sea. And it went without a creak or a crack or a moan. It just dropped away into the sea. We came back the next day to have a look at the place. The council came to me and said that they would have to demolish me because the risk to public safety. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but I want to save my property and I'm going to pull it back from the top of the dunes. War Office, do you want to fight? Put what they call a ring beam around the outside of the house and then put a telegraph pole across the front of the building, cabled it all up together, and the thing just slid. And it slid about 1 metre. We cleared all the sand with a little digger, and then we slid it another metre and did the same until we got it about 10.5 metres back. I've built this, and I'll protect it as much as I can. I won't say with my dying breath, but, you know, I'll protect it as long as I can, as best as I can, with the resources that I've got. King of the world, Mark, King of the world!
I've always lived in the area. I've always come birding on Chew Valley Lake. It's very much like my local patch for birding. I remember there was this terrible day where it rained and rained and rained, and the lake just burst its banks. And I remember I was in another village at the time, and it was me and like 20 other girls just huddled in a room together, wondering if our parents would even be able to come and get us. And it was only the next day that I found out that a guy had died that day. His car had been swept off a bridge and swept down the stream, and it was awful. Especially because it was like a bit of road that's really local. You drive over it all the time. You would never ever think that someone could die there. And I remember, like, at the time hoping that something like that never ever happened again. And obviously, since then, flooding's only gotten worse all over the country, including Somerset. I think humans just sort of feel superior to nature, and like there's always that feeling that we'll be able to continue doing what we want to do. But it's not true, and there are lots of people who suffer for that in the meanwhile. Bangladesh, where I have family, already has a massive climate change refugee crisis. We talk a lot about how climate change feels very distant and how it doesn't feel real. It does feel real to me. I know people that are being affected really explicitly, and it's really upsetting. There are over 4 million refugees living in the capital city in Bangladesh. They've lost their farmland, and that's only going to get worse. And I think whether that's in a few years or a few decades, we will probably eventually see something like that in the UK as well.
James has had 1 hour's fretful sleep. He's got £500,000 worth of debt. His animals are worth exactly that. They're his life's work. And of course, it's not just the weight of debt bearing down on him. He doesn't want his animals to suffer either. How do you cope with that little sleep, with the whole of your livelihood teetering in the balance?
I've already cried twice today.
just really emotional, really just draining. It's not only this, it's, you know, after last year's flood, a lot of the food isn't insured anyway. All of my fields are underwater. We've lost all our grass, so even...
And with that, this man, who's on the brink of exhaustion, could say no more.
So the water was up to there for 3.5 months. We came in by boat.
The winter of 2014, we had a lot of rain, and that rain didn't have anywhere to go. So it led to the Somerset Levels flooding, the longest civil incident since World War II.
Anything man-made needs maintenance. You wouldn't drive around without servicing your car and checking the oil. Otherwise, if you don't and you've got no oil, it's going to break. It's exactly the same as a river. If you don't maintain it, it's going to break. And in 2014, it broke, properly broke. 36,000 acres was flooded.
In 2014, I remember watching TV, and I said to my friends and colleagues, look, we should do something. We are an international organization based in Slough. We can help. As an international charity, we rely on the donation from the British public. So when a disaster happens, we should be the first one turning up. For me personally, being a British Sikh, to serve Britain is the greatest honor. Got absolutely frustrated trying to talk to official channels. I insisted, I said, look, we can help with buying sand, we can help with bags, we can help with food. It was the same answer. Thank you, we've taken your detail, we'll pass it on to gold, silver, whatever, come on. It was like fancy terms.
We had in the village, we had silver control, I think it was, in the village, and they were putting sandbags down. The army came in, took all the sandbags up, moved them up the road 1/2 mile and put them somewhere else. And you think, well, hang on a minute, who's in charge?
I'm a man of action. I don't do meetings. We just packed the van with food from the community, and we drove up to Somerset, just with my son and 3 other people. As soon as we got there, we got called to a house to make sure that the family got out quickly before the floods came in. Let's come this way. We need to move everything upstairs. But look at this, look. What's at the window of this room, look. This is the reality of floods. The water is coming in, so we got to work very fast. Myself, yourself, you, currently, we got to work fast to get all of this stuff upstairs. I couldn't believe it. I was like, everything you see for like miles was just water. That really shook me.
We all grabbed shovels and sandbags and we started shoveling the sand, and they just appeared from the side of the lorry, all these Sikhs. And if you can imagine, it's a little tiny country village. And then there's suddenly 20, 30 people wearing turbans.
And suddenly in the floods, everyone's talking to each other. Everyone's working together.
Ravi just walked straight up to me. He said, hi, my name's Ravi. I'm from Khalsa Aid. Do you want a shovel or do you want to hold the bag? He said, which do you want me to do? I said, well, you hold the bag, I'll fill them. And that's what he did. And we kept going right the way into the night until they ran out of sand. Khalsa Aid actually bought the entirety of the stock of sand because they seen that they could help, so they chose to help.
You remember the old saying, an Englishman's home is his castle. Everyone's home to them is their castle. It could be a mud hut somewhere in India, or it could be a nice little mansion in Somerset. It makes no difference. When you're hit by devastation, you're going to feel the pain.
As you can see, the earth banks they spent all of yesterday building to keep the water out have failed. It's knee-deep here in places, and the water is now in the cattle sheds. They've only got a few hours to get all of the animals out to safety.
We couldn't get lorries in because sections of the road had already flooded. So it's a massive logistical nightmare. And it felt a bit like Noah's Ark.
All this life, everything is built, is collapsed. I remember watching the news where local people were helping him with his livestock. Again, that community spirit just kicked in.
We sorted it. Friends sorted it. People I'd never met before brought tractors and trailers in to move cattle. We didn't stop for anything. We got those cattle out. But everybody thinks it's sorted now because they have done the river maintenance. But actually, unless you keep the maintenance up, it will very quickly go back to how it was. I keep thinking to myself, you know, are we going to flood again?
When the water goes out, it leaves a horrible muck. Your house is covered in this muck and you're freezing. What do you do?
The research that we have been conducting is looking at the impact of being flooded on mental health. The immediate impacts, the anger and the heightened anxiety lasts sort of 3 to 6 months. But afterwards, low-lying psychological impact can last anywhere between 2 and 5 years. People report that not just that they've lost personal possessions, but they feel as though somebody has been in their property. They feel violated. Even a small amount of rain causes persistent anxiety in these communities, and that's very difficult to live with. Very difficult.
How can something this beautiful be so devastating?
I think home is your security blanket. You can walk in the door and it wraps around you and things are okay. And we've had that ripped away from us.
You're so engrossed in your own, you know, tragedy and concerns of what's going on to you and your home that you just don't even have time to think beyond the immediate. As soon as we realised that all the rest of the neighbours were there, it's like, oh my God, where are Ken and Yola? Nobody knew what had happened to them.
It was raining very heavily, and because we have never had a real problem with water here, we went to bed. And then Ken woke me up and said, Yola, we are flooded. And there was a small damp patch on our carpet. And before I dressed and put some clothes on and some shoes on, the water was up to my knees. It was coming so quickly. You have water of 1 meter high in your house. So everything, all the furniture, everything, all our documents, my computer, everything was floating. The memories inside us will stay, but the proof of these memories, the photographs and letters, it's all gone. My Polish books are all gone also, so it's very difficult.
We had sleeping bags upstairs, fortunately, and we got undressed, took the wet clothes off, got into the sleeping bags and sort of hunkered down and waited.
We didn't have any other choice. We had to go upstairs, but not knowing what will happen next.
You have that dread in your mind of what you might find the next morning. The front door wasn't locked, so we went straight in and shouted.
When we heard voices outside, it was such a relief, if you like. Yeah, we are not on our own. And I started shouting.
We gave them piggybacks and carried them out of their own house, and they obviously were in a complete state of shock.
We were all shaking and crying because we were so upset. Ken has got a problem with his health, and he was in such a shock. Then he started to lose contact with reality. He ended up in hospital with pneumonia and COVID. Nobody expected him to leave the hospital alive. It's 5 months since it has happened, so we are able to talk about it, but for a long time. If we started to talk about it, my voice shook, and yeah, tears were there. And still, when will we be back? It starts raining, and you instantly become nervous. It's very difficult to get over the experience.
And you can see 5 months on, the state the place is still in. It's a mess.
He has been much stronger mentally than I have. He's immersed himself in redoing the garden, but he does have his really down days as well.
It's been a really tough period for us as a couple, you know. I mean, everybody manages things in different ways when you come out of a disaster.
I was finding that really, really hard. I was just got in the car and disappeared for a couple of hours.
We do deal with things differently. Like the wooden furniture, I couldn't see it sitting out on our drive.
And then I could see Roger cutting doors in half and lugging them down the garden.
For me, that was quite cathartic, being able to do something. We have got to face the reality that, you know, if it's happened once here, this can happen again.
Because the water came in through the ceiling and it's all in the electrics, I'm thinking 4 weeks, you know? Hopefully it's less, but I won't anticipate less. Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah, turn right, turn right. Hello. How you doing?
I'm all right, you?
Yeah, I've been better.
I've never been to a floodplain in Portobello before. Mad, isn't it?
Oh, yeah,
All right, slide. Ready?
Yeah, let's go.
OK, so you want to show me the damage?
Yes. All right, so, welcome.
So did all the water come through the front door?
No.
OK, fine.
Just some of it came through there.
Yep.
Then we had water coming into the business above us, through the ceiling.
Did your toilets overflow?
The toilets overflowed.
God, it stinks in here.
Yeah. You know, the fridges.
They'll all be knackered.
Yeah.
Hit the water as they dig down there, that's all done.
Be really careful on this floor because of the grease mixed with the...
Yeah, it's grease mixed with...
With the water and shit and whatnot.
All right. How long have you been running?
9 years.
OK. So was the bar already in situ, or is that a new bar? Have you changed that?
No, the bar was...
Yeah. So the bar was there, OK.
Yeah.
Get out this stink. So the reason I ask about that is I didn't look on your policy. No, you've got no tenants improvements. So anything you've done to the fabric of the building, you're not going to be covered for those. So have you got any timescales in your head about how long it's going to
be? My first kind of mission is to get everything out. Yeah, absolutely everything out. And then...
You don't do that?
Right, or
just leave it.
Yeah.
Because it will all need to be assessed individually to identify whether or not it's a write-off or not.
OK.
Bear in mind, if it's sat in a foot of shit water, basically, I'd say it's going to be written off. But they can't do anything until they've approved it.
OK.
If you throw anything before they've been, or before they've approved it, you won't get any money for it.
Got it.
I don't think you'll be back in within 6 months.
But I can't do 6 months of staff wages without...
No. You'll get interim payments throughout it. So that'll be for your contents and your business interruption, which we'll request at certain points and then forward straight onto you.
OK.
All right? There should be a weight off your mind, mate, because we'll...
we'll
get hold of it.
I don't want to have to think about this side of things. Obviously, the time frame is a little bit disconcerting, but, you know, we'll figure it out.
It's always the same. It's a conversation we have every time. People expect that it happens, and then there's loads of people come bowling in and get everything sorted out, and it doesn't work that way. It takes ages. There's reports and all sorts, because the insurers are making their case to save money already. So he won't be back in. I don't think he'll be up and running again within 6 months, realistically.
When I say you get over it through time, you didn't really get over it. It's always in the back of your mind. Every time it rains now, you're thinking, what's going to happen? No, I try and hide my emotions, but inside it's really hurting. It's actually killing us. It gets you doing it. You could stand and cry like a wee bairn. And you say, why? It's not like it's happened once and it'll never happen again. It's happened 4 times.
This time, Mick kept being sick. And I think it's just been the stress of everything. He didn't want to share how bad he was feeling, but then I think him bottling it up then didn't help. I just had to say, it's not worth making yourself ill over it. It's a house.
Well, the plan today is dump a load of sand to the base of the dune here to stop the dune collapsing again. And then once we've got all the sand in place, we've got what we call the concrete waffle boards, and we're going to lay them on the top of the sand, and hopefully that'll hold the sand together and stop it from slipping again. Hopefully, with all this being shored up, this year I can start enjoying life as I wanted to when I moved here.
Second on the national risk register behind global pandemics is storm surges from the North Sea. So infrastructure like this is key to the protection of the city from those sorts of storm surge events. But they were designed for sea level 20, 30 years ago. So if you think about a metre of sea level rise coming by the end of the century, infrastructure like this is not going to be sufficient to protect places like Hull. This is all what are known as the washlands, so they've always flooded. The problem is we've put lots of houses and communities in the way of that water now, and that's why we're seeing new homes getting flooded. Some people in Snaith, where we're now, are still recovering 15 months after their house being flooded.
At the end of the day, we own this land. We can't just walk away and leave it. We have to do something. I want to forget where that property is, move it up the land, maybe put a sump pump in. I can just future-proof the property against further flooding.
Yep.
Have you even worked out a risk to this area or even outlying areas like this for when potentially this could happen again?
So yeah, will it flood here again? Yeah. The risk of it happening is increasing. So the more you can do to make your property resilient to being flooded and not just rely on the flood infrastructure around rivers, the better. And I think when houses like this get flooded, building back in a flood resilient way is absolutely the thing that we should be doing.
I've known the owners for a long time. They've been part of Hoik for many, many years, and a nicer couple you couldn't meet. It's sad to see that this is their business now being demolished. But at the same time, we need to crack on, and if we don't get this building down in a safe way, then it will hinder us bringing the flood protection scheme to this area. The Hoik Volunteer Flood Group will always be here as long as they're needed. But now, with the flood protection scheme well underway, we're hoping it will all be stood down for good.
I think the one thing that we can't do is carry on building bigger and bigger walls and hoping that eventually that's going to stop nature and stop the water. I think we absolutely have to figure out something much more long-term and much more sustainable in order to properly manage these things. Yeah, because otherwise we are just passing this issue down, not even to the next generation, to ourselves in 5 or 10 years' time. You know, these aren't issues that are just going to disappear, that are just going to go away by themselves. And it's absolutely in our benefit to figure out how to cope with them now.
When there is another flood, and we very much feel in Hebden Bridge that it's when, not if, people have made a lot of interventions, at least homes and businesses can be turned around and saved, and things can be put back together again quicker. But that's a very difficult situation to live in. I think there's still a massive misunderstanding about just how devastating a flood can be in a town. Because everything comes to a standstill, everything stops. And then it's the community that comes together afterwards to make it better. And in Hebden Bridge, we're really good at coming together and making it better. We excel at it. The town hall in Hebden Bridge isn't a normal town hall. It's a part of the community. And if there's any time that a community needs a community town hall, it's when it's going through a flood. So 2015 for Boxing Day, first thing we did is we got an electrician to make sure all the electrics were safe, and they were. And so I opened the front doors, and within 20 minutes of opening the front doors, the whole building was full.
Oh, what a relief to be able to come and get food and drink. And, you know, I was happily going to pay for anything that I had, and it's kind of, no, you know, it's all free.
When people walked through the doors of the front of the town hall, they would actually go into almost like a shock. The difference between unsafe and safe was just visible. The front foyer was warmth and light and dry.
It wasn't the official lines of power that came to help. It was groups of people working together in mutual support, and wonderful things happened.
Yeah, people came and helped to sweep the mud out. It was just amazing. The kindness of strangers.
I was at the height of being utterly stressed. I hadn't slept any of the nights. And it was just at that moment where I was 3 days in and I got a call from Ravi at Khalsa Aid. He just knew all of the right things to say to someone running a crisis hub, to make them know that they weren't alone and that he was going to support me.
You get us someone for your team who knows the local builders, merchants, will purchase the stuff. Let's get helping the people.
And then get the stuff out. So what's in there you bought?
Cleaning stuff, disinfectant, sponges, brushes.
Oh, wow, OK.
And then he said, also, here, I've got a Khalsa Aid credit card, and there is an unlimited amount of money on this card for anything that you need to buy.
The beauty about what Khalsa Aid did was that they knew what we needed before we knew it ourselves.
So I said, OK, we got another team which does hot meals. So when it's cold, when it's wet, when all your power is out, you're going to get a nice warm meal. Punjabi meal, lift the spirits.
They didn't just turn up with food, but Khalsa Aid packaged it up and got it out as well.
I remember the tweets later in the day. We are up to our knees in mud, it's freezing, it's cold, but chickpea curry never tasted so good.
We were saying, is this what it takes to get good curry in Hebden Bridge if we've got to have a flood?
Second to none, this. It's the best curry I've ever had. It's just incredible.
And then this is the thing that absolutely got me, was in my moment of absolute need, he said to me, I am here for you day or night. No matter what you need, no matter what the time, you pick up the phone and you call me and I am here for you. And I just burst into tears. Because he deals in crisis every single day, he knew where I was at emotionally and he knew the right things to say to make me be able to carry on. And so I carried on.
I knew Ravi had been ill for a while, off and on, and it transpired that he needed a kidney. So I rang him up and said, look, if I'm a match, you have one of mine, it's yours.
That's the sort of love that we developed in Somerset. People want to give me their kidneys.
Thankfully, he has found a match, but had I been a match, I'd have been there in a heartbeat. When you think that was as far as the eye could see, right away to the line of willows, all of that was underwater. And now everything's green again. Cows are grazing, wildlife's back. You'd never know it happened.